What is failure to Linda?
I see failure as an opportunity to do something differently. I sit in it, I feel it, and then I think, what's next? This is the kind of leader who hardly ever called people by name. He called you by your job title. I remember the one incident, tried to get into the conversation with, but what about the people angle? And he turned and he said to me, HR, shut up.
Sure.
My natural tendency is to fight. And I remember the other woman in the EXCO just looked at me and she was like, I'll leave it. But the result of that, Nontogozo, was in that EXCO, I struggled to speak. I literally, when I had a report to give, it took a lot for me to be able to use words to say what I needed to say. And one of the things we forget when we come out of corporate is that the titles that we hold, head of HR, CMO, those titles are titles that you actually leave behind. So the relationships that you garner and the people who are calling you because you have that title, stop calling you when you have that title. So the ease with which you walk into certain doors, and we don't think about this because actually it's all going so well. In my case, a whole Rolodex of people that I know who will pick up my call. They do not pick up the call.
Linda. You know, I'm laughing because it's such a gift to have you here. Thank you for making the time.
No, not at all. How could I say no, Nontogo? We've known each other for so long.
For so long, I know.
Yes,
I know.
yes.
To kick us off, what is failure to Linda?
Yeah, you know, I had to think about that because I know that's how you start the podcast.
Yeah.
And I think as a young person, failure was really hard. You know, the usual shame that comes with it. But as I got older, for me, failure is really just another rerouting. And I don't know whether this is part of the psychology or the spirituality. So I see failure as an opportunity to do something differently. I sit in it, I feel it.
Yeah.
And then I think, what's next?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Growing up, was that how failure was at home? I'm thinking when you were in your high school stage, teen stage.
No.
Stuck the
No,
job.
no,
And
not at
parents
all.
matter in your life. Obviously, they're still driving what you do.
Yeah.
What was
no.
failure then?
So at that point, there really wasn't room for failure. There was no question. So I come from a family that's kind of third, fourth generation professional. The question that you were asked in standard 8 was, which varsity are you going to? Right? So certainly in terms
Standard
of academic...
8, grade 10 now, by today's language.
Yes. So I've just aged myself with that. Yes. So no, there was certainly not from a career perspective, there was no question about failure. It was assumed you would succeed. And at the time, I was one of those young people that kind of, everyone who kind of did maths and science well, you're going to be a doctor. That's not what eventually happened. But yes, so there was no room to learn how to fail, for sure.
Yeah. And so looking at your definition and how you talk about an opportunity to define and find a new route, the rerouting. Interesting you use that word because I also have it on my card. And I want to just explore, how do you know when it's time to reroute? Because there is obviously a level of a desire, wishful thinking, optimism. No, but I shouldn't quit. I can keep pushing. How do you decide it's time to reroute?
So right now, it's very different from the early days. So early days, I'd push regardless. And in fact, my husband would tell you, I pushed my entrepreneurial ventures probably too far, right? But that was before. That was before I was able to think about whether or not, if you're pushing something so hard, whether or not it was meant to be. So now my sense about it is you push as far as it feels natural. And things that are supposed to come do come. You're not supposed to have uphill in that sense, right? I mean, you will have difficulties, that's life. But you ask the question of, okay, so how far? I think as you feel things smoothly moving, or the opportunity of that, you continue, right? You continue moving it forward.
Yeah. Let's talk about a failure you've had or experienced, which at the time it occurred, it felt like your life was disastrous, like the biggest, I guess, a misstep that could happen or a failure that could happen. How have you navigated that, and what lessons did it teach you about Linda?
Yeah, there have been a few, hey, Nontokozo. But if I think about possibly the most recent failure was kind of in recognizing, so as a parent, you kind of do your best. At least you think you're doing your best. You read all the books, you tune into all the podcasts, and sometimes even your best efforts don't quite get there. So for me, I think something that I've come to learn really only in the past kind of 2 years, 5 years, is that your best effort may not be what is required. So, I mean, with my daughter, for instance, who went through a very difficult time in matric, if you had asked me in that year and the year after, what did you do right? Or what did you do wrong? I would have looked at you like, what are you talking about? I put in my best effort. This is it.
Yeah.
But, kind of 7 years later, when I reflect on the steps that I took to try and pull her in from a difficult situation, I do realize that that was a failure to not stop and put myself in her shoes, a failure to thinking that just because I had the academic understanding, I knew exactly what was happening. So that for me, if you ask me in the last couple of years, that's probably one of the biggest ones.
Yeah. When you realize that, like, what does it say about the relationship of a parent with a child and the ability to hear the child, to see the child? Because I know as a parent myself, usually, like, there is this, I guess, this ideal life we want to give our children. There is this ideal level of success we want to give our children.
Absolutely.
And some of it is attached to maybe who I am.
No,
that
100%.
I have that pursuit.
No, this is true.
Yeah. So, like, for you, how did you bridge the gap between what your daughter was understanding to be the journey she wants to be on and what you are imagining is the journey?
It took many years of therapy. That's just the truth of the story.
The both of you.
Individually and together.
Yeah.
That's the truth of the story. It took many years of trying to understand how to be a conscious parent is to understand what your needs are, which are bleeding into, for the best efforts, but bleeding into what needs to happen with the next person, right?
Yeah.
Especially because, you've kind of seen quite a few movies and you're kind of wanting to cast a way, and you miss many things in that sense. So even when you know professionally that what you're supposed to be doing is reflecting and asking and getting in there, when it's about you, that's not easy. Kind of Dr. Heal yourself. No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I remember, and I'm glad you're here because I did talk about, I referenced a moment you guided me through as a parent to do with my children. And I phoned you in the car. I'm not sure if you remember. I said, Linda, I am a few minutes away from driving through the gate, walking through the door. Please, can you coach me? Like, how must I be when I walk through that door? And the thing you said was, just allow your child to be, believe what they tell you, and exchange empathy and a hug.
Wow.
That's
so
what
I've got goosebumps as I listen to you, because that's the point, isn't it? That I was able to do that for you. But if I was in that situation with my own children, I don't know how much of that I would have pulled up at that point. So it's taken me many years to actually be able to stop and pull up the stuff that I know naturally. But it's taken failure, it's taken pain, it's taken strained relationships to get me there.
One of the questions I wanted to explore with you is, like, how do you know when to ask for help? In whether it's professionally or in your personal life, because I think sometimes what one misses is the opportunity to get guidance or to get a perspective from someone slightly removed from a situation. But to others it might come across as, a weakness.
So to me, it doesn't. So it's a natural thing to ask for help. And again, I think it's because of the profession. There are things that you don't know, especially because when things are too close, you can't see them. So that becomes a thing. So, as a therapist, you're in therapy every week. And that is asking for help, whether it's because of the people you or yourself are seeing or because of what you're going through in your own personal life. But again, it's been a journey even to be in therapy every week, right? But that's possibly it. Definitely growing up, the question of asking for help, it wasn't taboo, but it's just like you didn't really think about it. It's not like, why? Figure it out.
I think even in marriage, because it's like, you decided to get married. You decided you were ready to have a child. You decided you were ready to live away from home, to go overseas.
Yeah, but you see, with me, it's because of my super independence that I wouldn't have asked in the beginning, right? So what I would have done instead is consulted books and that sort of thing, and then thought I had all the answers. But that's very dangerous. And I've learned that, kind of in the last 5-7 years, that it does become important to actually pull other people into the fray. Especially those of us who grew up feeling like our esteem rests on us knowing, on us doing well. It becomes hard to actually be someone who asks. But I also think that those of us who grew up, and most of us grew up this way, with parents who... I had an amazing mom. She's just passed 2 months ago.
Yeah.
She was part of a generation, though, of women who were go-getters, very determined. The kids are going to make it, but very stoic as well, right? So those of us who grew up in homes where our parents almost defined even how we felt. I often tell the example of you playing outside, it's cold. You're not cold because you're playing outside. And your mom's... Also coaches. And you say, but I'm kodoli, right? And they're like, yeah, but and, the more of that happens to you, the less you trust your inner voice. Because you start looking to the outside to actually even tell you what's happening on the inside. All of it meant really well and caring. But it kind of takes away from that authenticity, depending on how often that happens.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because where I struggle with parent-child dynamic, allowing the child to listen to their inner voice, is this almost expectation that I am a parent, I should know. And almost that thing of, what if, what would my mother say? You are being irresponsible. Even like things like grooming, right?
Yes.
Why is my son's hair like this? Why are they not dressed formally or properly? And I think for me, it's the thing of the voice that says, you are the parent, you are the adult. This is not good parenting. Allowing your child to have that inner thing.
Well, again, it's age dependent. I think that there is, you do, especially at the younger ages, you do have to play the parent. You got to say, come in, right? But I think we take that into teen, even sometimes into early adulthood. But even in the teen years, I just find that it's just the way that you're going to do that. So, same example. Okay, ngiyazwana ukuthi, you're not cold.
Yeah.
But you know what? Maybe if you do put on the jersey, you can play longer. What do you think?
Yeah.
So
present.
So what you've done is you've let them have their will, but you've also protected them against whatever illness. So it's that kind of negotiated space that I think is hard to do, especially when they're younger, but I think it is necessary to do.
I agree. So let's talk about in your profession, how you would guide someone who is terrified of failing. What tricks or avenues would you provide the person terrified of failing?
So always your starting point is what the thing means to them, right? So one of the first questions I'd ask is, okay, so not just what it means to you, but where did you do it first? Where did you fail first? And usually in looking at that incident that was first, and how do we know it was first? It's the one that comes up for you immediately without even thinking, oh, I was on the playground and this child kicked me and I fell off and everyone it's amazing. So you have a 43-year-old just come up with a 10-year-old memory, right? So the things that come up naturally are usually the places at which the trauma has happened. So that's what we would do. We would look at, okay, so what happened there? And at that time, what were you able to do? What were you not able to do? Because it's in understanding the origins of how I handled it, how I coped with it, that we can help you with it now. If I wasn't that sort of therapist, some people would immediately teach you how to reframe whatever's going on right now. And that's good enough as well. But I think if one wants to get to the source of helping someone who is extremely afraid of failure, is to understand where it started, but also to understand what it meant at the time. Because at the time, the chances are high they didn't have the strategies to deal with it. And of course they didn't, because they were like 9 or 10 or 7. Right? And the ability to then reframe that and have that experience live in their 43, 25-year-old body is very different. And that's what usually helps them get over fear of failure.
What do you say to people who think reframing is like almost, being an eternal optimist? Oh, no, so you think things are just going to change. And I'm like, but like I'm a reframer, partly because of my faith. And also just the reality for me is there are things I really just want my brain and my headspace to not have to carry with a heavy load in terms of how I perceive them.
So I guess there is a difference with with people being too Pollyanna-ish, right? Sunflowers and sunshine.
Yeah.
So that's not what we're talking about. I think what we're talking about here is the ability to see what is real, and then the ability to still step out of it and do something different. So when people say to me, oh, but not everything is going to work out, that is great. You're right. Not everything is going to work out, right? So the stuff that works out, what did you do? What were the strategies that you used so that we can use them when things don't work out, right? So I think certainly in my profession, it's not about yay, rah, rah. No.
Yeah.
It is about, okay, feel it. Feel how it makes you feel helpless, how it makes you feel sad. Where did it come from? So what can we do? Sometimes what can we do even at that age? So that what you bring forward is different. And we know that the more you do that, the more you create the kind of neural pathways that remind you that actually doing it this way works, right? So that's one of the biggest gifts we've been given, I think, in the last 30 years with neuroscience, that we now know that the brain can change. The whole story around neuroplasticity, the whole story around being able to create the kind of habits that get you to do things differently. So that's been a gift to us.
Yeah. So I want to explore marriages and couples and relationships.
Sure.
So I know
you know I love it.
I know you do. First, what struggles do you see a lot of couples come to therapy with? Because I'm sure there's like it's going to be probably one of these 5 if you're to like regular on like the themes that couples struggle with.
So almost everyone says communication. Like, that's just what people naturally say. Communication, conflict management. And of course, ever so often, we're working with things like trust violations, like infidelity and things like this. But if you say to me, top, it's absolutely communication. But then you and I know that it's not communication. But that's what people say, right? So what often has to happen is that we have to unpack and try and see how and why and at which layer, because communication happens at different layers. What exactly are we dealing with? Sometimes what we're really talking about more often than not is it's our inability to understand how, when we are trying to connect, what stands in our way is that we are doing so as if we are still very young children, right? And it's always such a strange thing for couples to see that.
What do you mean we're still young children?
So sometimes the fights we're having have nothing to do with the dishes. What they have to do with is how I feel about being told what to do because of the way that I was raised in a very restrictive way of being told what to do. You're touching me in a sore point that I didn't even realize was a sore point for me. And it's manifesting in me refusing and being difficult about the dishes. So there are very few times when communication is purely about the content that is sitting on the table. Almost all the time. When it comes to conflict between two people who are intimate, it has to do with the background with which we view what's currently happening. And if it's unspoken, you can imagine you're fighting like this.
Like totally missing each other.
You're missing each other.
Yeah. And in cases where you have a chance to talk to a couple before they make permanent, in however way their relationship is becoming permanent, how would you guide one to unearthing those things? Because I can imagine, like, obviously there are things that we are focusing on, that are a visible marker of our pairing, our matching, our whatever in this relationship.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is important about what you're saying is when one leaves it for too late in the process, it is a lot harder. It is a lot harder, right? But even at that point, because uncoupling is so hard, you've got not just children, but you've got an entire life that's intertwined. I would still say trying therapy is going to be a good thing, because especially when you have children, you're still going to co-parent, right? So rather co-parenting in a way that supports the positive mental health of the children you're co-parenting is a better thing. So often you ask me, how do you help couples uncover that? If they've given you the opportunity to sit in front of you, your job is to help them untie the pieces. It's almost like a Lego set, because it starts off at a point where we're saying, okay, so what are the real frustrations of this story of yours? And for most couples, they've never put on a piece of paper what the true things are about you that truly frustrate me. What is often interesting is that the things that frustrate you about the other person are the things that you actually need to grow in. And I've had quite a few couples where eventually we're looking at each other and we're saying, wait a minute, this looks like a growth conversation and not a part. Let's just give it our best shot first before we decide to go. But like everything else, it does take patience to be able to hear each other and to be able to have that conversation.
And what's interesting is when you say it's a growth conversation, there's this idea that, I'm 48, I'm 47. What growth am I still to have in terms of just, I'm settled in my ways, I'm established in this relationship.
No, I
you
hear
you
that.
found me like this.
No, I hear that. I've actually had people say, no, I can't talk. Don't ask me to reflect. That's changing my personality. And you're thinking, okay, yes, let me help you.
Yeah.
But what's often interesting, and you would know this from sitting around a boardroom table, if you sit back and you just watch adults interact, what you often see is that it's not a different interaction from that you would see if you're sitting on the side of a field watching children play. The dynamics are not different. The words may be bigger. The people may be bigger. They may have more money, right? So when we talk about, but I'm 47 or I'm 50, the question though is, when you are in conflict with someone else, who comes out? Who am I speaking to? Am I really speaking to the 50-year-old? Or am I speaking to this 10-year-old who's actually having a tantrum around the boardroom table, or even, in conflict? It's easier to convince people in an intimate relationship when they watch themselves and how they respond to each other, that is not the adult part of you talking. Right? You'd never get that chance in a boardroom.
No, I was going to actually go to that. Yeah.
But in an intimate relationship, if we're trying to fix it, it is easier to get to the realization that it's not the adult part of us that actually has these difficult moments. It's the part of us that are least grown. Because one of the things I think we must accept, that we have different parts inside of us that come out depending on what the situation is, right? So if I'm feeling threatened for whatever reason, and depending on what that situation is, the part of Linda that's going to come out is the little girl who perhaps was at boarding school and nobody listened. That's the part that's going to come out. And how does that child show up? She's fighting. She's fighting, right?
Yeah.
So if we're able to slow down well enough, we can actually get to understand what has activated that nervous system, who is sitting in the room, and therefore my partner can hold that little girl as opposed to this grown-up 50 plus who's acting like a 5-year-old.
Yeah. Let's talk about the boardroom.
The boardroom, yes.
That's where I met you, in the boardroom.
It really is.
Yes.
For my sins, yes.
Yeah. What failures taught you the most about leadership in the boardroom? And if you can paint the picture of that failure and what it taught you as a leader.
Sure. There are several. What stands up for me very quickly, there are two. I'll take the easier one, because the other one is still, I'm still processing the other one. So I had a leader who, and I'm definitely not going to do one where you and I met, so I'm going to go to another place. Because immediately you're going to be like,
I know. Fetch from any file and any archive.
I'm going to another file.
Yes, yeah.
So I had a leader who was, I think he was probably very lonely, very disturbed. But what you saw was absolute and utter rudeness around the boardroom table. I mean, it was the kind of situation where all people felt was, at least he's not talking to me. So, because if he's talking to me, he could slay my weight. He could, Yeah. And this is the kind of leader who hardly ever called people by name. He called you by your job title.
Sure.
So I remember the one incident where I tried to get into the conversation with, but what about the people angle? And he turned and he said to me, HR, shut up.
Sure.
And my natural tendency is to fight. So there I was. And I remember the other woman in the EXCO just looked at me and she was like, leave it. There were only 2 women on that EXCO.
You were the third or the second?
I was the second one. There were only 2 of us. So the one
in an EXCO of how many people?
There were 12 people.
Okay.
All male, maybe 2-3 African, rest white, and then the 2 women. So I remember working very hard not to say anything. But the result of that, Nontogozo, was in that EXCO, I struggled to speak. I mean, like, I'm not even joking. I literally, when I had a report to give, it took a lot for me to be able to use words to say what I needed to say. Now, that's a very strange thing for me, but like, that's never happened to me before.
And at this point, you're quite senior in your career.
I'm extremely senior.
We can't say you're like a junior trainee.
I'm not supposed to be stuttering, right?
Yeah.
But the intense fear that this leader injected into this team meant that even giving a simple opinion, like, you had to think twice. Now, it took many years for me to actually realize so I left. And how I left is I actually went to him and I said, "You're a bully. I will never, ever allow myself to be put down by you." I mean, I cried talking to him. I cried leaving. It was just a total mess. But many years later, I realized what a gift he was, in the sense that at the time I didn't. But in the sense that for the first time, here was someone who challenged what I thought was my natural ability to speak, to be confident, and what followed my leaving there was actually a better role, the role that where you and I met. And when I reflect and when I work through many, many therapy sessions around it, I realized what a gift that was. It wasn't at the time, but how it turned into a gift is that I was able to, with the assistance of friends, family, to really look at, but what happened there? How did you go from being confident and being able to speak to just like a paddle, right? And every time I have to make any public speech or anything, I recognize that feeling. I notice it, I recognize it, and I'm able to talk to it. Right? So this is, for me, this is my gift many years later. It wasn't at the time.
How did it shape how you lead, having worked for a person like that?
So I think I went the other way, I think I was overly consultative, very decisive. So anyone who's worked with and for me will tell you, very decisive, maybe to a fault, a little bit pushy. But where it shaped me the most was in relation to how I show up when I'm standing by myself in a public space. I think that's where the biggest lesson was.
What do you mean when I'm standing by myself?
If I have to speak.
Okay.
If I have to speak before an audience. I think that's kind of where it shaped me. I do still believe that at the end of the day, if you're going to be a leader, your job is to make sure that everyone around the table has a voice. So that philosophy, I think, is just part of who I am, even before this.
Had you attempted to have a frank conversation?
A few, many.
And how did that? Okay, so what went into those attempts, and how did that work out for you?
So he would say to me, "You're clearly not a corporate person." So the other thing is that I am an entrepreneur. I kind of have been in corporate a few times, but generally I'm an entrepreneur. And he would just brush me off. He'd be like, "You're not a corporate person. Don't you know this is what happens? This is how we speak to each other here." Or the one time I remember he said to me, "You know what? I looked at you and I knew you were a Mthenjane coming to sort us out." So it was that kind of
Mthenjane as in the press wife.
So always offhand, brush you off. I'm not listening to you. That was a tough one. That was probably my toughest corporate experience.
How would you coach someone who is having that exact boss and that exact experience right now? What would be your 3 things that you say they should deploy as a strategy?
I think one of the most important things, the absolute first one for me is, so obviously you always have to be prepared in these meetings. But then you have to watch your body. You have to be very aware of your nervous system as you become activated. because if that's the case, if you can watch as you become activated, it means you can almost slow down time, breathe into it, give yourself a minute or two to think about what's possibly happening. So for me, that's your own self-awareness when it comes to dealing with difficult people is important. The second thing I would then say to them is, then you need to understand why. What is it about this behavior? I know we think it's the brashness, but maybe it's not the brashness, right? So what is it about this behavior that for you in particular raises your levels, right?
Because I'm reacting because I recently asked myself, what is the role of a specific individual in my life?
Yes. No, 100%. So what is it about them as they do what they do that is so meaningful to you, meaningful enough to impact you, right? And then the third thing is, okay, so what's the story you tell yourself as this is happening? Right? Because if you can change the story, you can change the way you're going to then react. Your reaction is the last thing. It's the last thing that you do. So if you're able to realize, oh my goodness, I am starting to get nervous. It's more than nerves. I'm going to bring up. My stomach is it's a bit tight. So you're noticing all of that. And then the story I'm telling is, I don't actually know what I'm doing. Oh my goodness, I'm not prepared, right? Then you stop. Oh, but last night we went through this presentation. Actually, I am.
Yeah.
You breathe and then you respond.
Yeah.
And I've often noticed this even with interviews, Ntokozo, the best of people, Barack Obama and all of that, people stop and pause versus just running into it. And my assumption is that they're running through similar steps before they respond.
Yeah. What's the role of, and I have to go there.
Ooh,
I apologize ahead of time.
It depends.
What's the role of HR in that scenario? Because I know, and I don't even know, Linda, to be honest, that most people know when to activate HR's participation, because there is obviously the expectation that me and my line manager have spoken. Now, in that case, this line manager scares the heck out of me. And then the bullying is displayed and witnessed by many. So what is the role?
Well, as you know, I
sat there as HR. I'm sorry. That's why I apologize for asking this question, but I must ask.
Look, there is a braveness that we have to have as HR professionals, right?
Yeah.
So the unfortunate thing about the HR role in most organizations is that it for the most part, it does not have the strength that it needs to have, right? And partly it's because of its history, but partly it's because of the people also who are in those roles, right? What I believe in that situation, if I was in HR, what my expectation would have been is for the other human being who is in the room, who is a people person, to then help me by facilitating that conversation, right? But because I was HR, I kind of had to do it myself.
That's what you do it yourself,
Right? I think that we must appreciate that it's a dual conversation when it comes to human resources, between line that actually respects the role that you have and not just bringing you in when there are performance problems, and the individual and their own competency around what they know that they can do, right? So it is it's an awful double-edged sword where it really should be quite a powerful role. I've been fortunate because the next CEO that I then worked with believed in the people role. So, it really starts there. Then you see human resources blossoming, if that's the case, because they've got so much to offer. But that line person, that CEO, has to believe in the function.
Let's talk about self-image presentation, preservation. Have you had moments where you should appear like you've got your business together, like you've got your ish together, whether it's in your network or with your kids, where like falling apart and not being in control is a difficult display.
So I'm done with that.
Are you?
It's over. The day I left corporate, that was over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's been a good,
Couple of
2019?
years. Yes.
It's been a good couple of years. Because in certain spaces, you feel like you can do nothing but hold things together, right? You feel that you could be punished. Your own sense of self depends on looking like you have things controlled and together. Since I left, one of the key decisions that I made is I kind of show up as I am. I don't apologize for not knowing. In fact, not knowing makes me more curious. It wasn't always that way. And again, it comes from the way one, has learned and has grown up. Like you've got to know, that questioning. I mean, even if you think about the kind of classrooms we went to, you don't put up your hand and ask questions. Like you must just know, right? So from a young age, most of us did not. Curiosity was not
encouraged or celebrated.
It wasn't encouraged or celebrated. So it's taken me a long time to be comfortable with not knowing, to be comfortable with not having answers, to be comfortable with being curious. And ever so often it hits me. I had a couple the other day that I worked with, and I kind of felt that I got it wrong. In what we were busy doing in that conversation. And it's quite interesting because as I reflected about it so in the moment I was able to say, that's very interesting. Right? I was able to play the curiosity card. But leaving that room, I really felt almost defeated. Like, how could you not see that? Right? So that piece, I think, will always be there. But my ability to say, well, then look at how you carry the conversation forward. Look at how much more you learned. So I don't think it would be honest of anyone to say to us that, I kind of walked through water. No. So the piece that still says, was that really your best job? Did you really do that? Piece will always be there. How quickly it dissipates, how quickly you're able to turn around from it, for me, it's not different.
I think, when I look at my journey, I realize even the whole idea of, being married, happily married, getting divorced, when things are falling apart, you've got to kind of arrive at home for Christmas and you must be a happy couple. There's a wearing of a mask where emotions that are negative are again, we're going to go back to shame display. And I find it so liberating to be able to find someone in my support structure where I can just be like, hi, Ziabuya. Things are, the fires are burning. How would you guide a person who needs to find that trusted outlet, that trusted person or space to be unmasked and to vulnerably share that they don't have their things together?
So my first thing then, Ntokozo, would be let's not even agree on the mask. Can we not agree on the mask? Can we agree that? And if you think about self-compassion, right? Self-compassion is about understanding that a lot of the things that happen to us are human nature. So, and if you take that on as a concept, that it's about placing yourself in positive regard, so thinking about yourself in the best way possible, and then realizing also that everything that happens has happened to other people many a times before. So that for me would be the starting point. So before we even try and find someone where we can unmask, I think the starting point is self-compassion and remembering what that's about. I mean, part of what is currently happening, certainly to those of us who live in a place like Joburg, the support structures that traditionally would have been there have either turned to friends who are almost the same age as you, and there's a lot of dwindling of the different generational support that you otherwise would have gotten. So I encourage people to be part of like-minded groups. Of course, I absolutely encourage therapy for health, and not just when something is going wrong. But being part of like-minded groups means that we are pulling together some of the support system that existed naturally when we lived sonke elokishini, and there were different generations of aunts, and there was someone just a little bit crazy like you that you could say, but have you seen this? But more and more is no longer available to most people who live in the urban areas.
Yeah. And I want to ask you about that circle of people you find if you feel like you are alienated, or in the corporate boardroom, where there are circles and clubs that you are not a part of. How do you cultivate or coach yourself to almost reframing that, or accepting that as your reality? Like sometimes, people say at work, I'm not there for water cooler conversations. I'm not there to make friends. I'm not there for coffee conversations. But I think those relationships carry you sometimes.
You can't survive without those relationships if you're in a corporate space. You need the peer relationship. You need to find someone who is senior, who can speak for you in a place where you're not. You actually can't survive, especially if you're planning on going up the ladder. Like if you're kind of in and out, I guess that's fine. There are many things that we do as HR to set up my basketball club. So, first of all, just connecting to people on things that matter to you. And there are many little things that matter that are at work that don't have to do with work. So you do have to put yourself out there. And the ability to be connected means that one of the biggest scourges that we're all currently facing, certainly as mental health professionals, is isolation. People are isolated. And it didn't help that during COVID, some people gave birth and we didn't know that they had given birth. Some people lost half of their families. All of this didn't help. So the ability to actually create connections with others in the workplace means that you actually have a better experience. And connect first on things that actually don't matter. There's always something. We both have daughters, or we both, there's always a connecting point. But it does mean that it's you who has to go out and find it.
Yeah. How do you define corporate politics?
Way.
My favorite question.
Way. So, retrospectively, I see it as, again, it's just, I don't want to call it playground stuff, but it really is. And I do think that you don't have to, so there's a difference between the question you asked about connection and politics. And for me, the difference is you do need to be connected at work. You don't have to be in the politics. And the politics are really about the power struggles to be seen, to be heard, to matter. And I think if you understand that that's actually what people are doing, and yes, the end goal then being making more money, but at its core, it's to be seen, to be heard, to be validated, to be thought of as important, right? Because there's always a little part of us that doesn't think we're good enough. So that's how I define it.
Yeah. How do you coach somebody who's struggling with navigating corporate politics?
One of the first questions is, why do you have to be in it? Like, what does the role require of you? Because I think you can be very astute at sidestepping and yet looking like you're in it. Right?
Yes.
I often think that if you understand basic human needs, like to be seen, to be validated, to be heard, to be seen as important, it's not difficult to actually pull senior relationships and be part of even conversations you naturally. And I know you're smiling because I think you know what I'm talking about. So you don't have to be in it. But if you're astute enough to understand human nature, you can be in it without being in it. Yeah.
What's the role of a sponsor in a corporate context?
to speak for you when you're not there. There are many rooms, many conversations. Most of us are not privy to. Some of them happen at a restaurant using a napkin to make an organogram, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a sponsor and that organogram, which was originally on a napkin, is brought into a larger group of people, if nobody knows you, then it is sure that you are not going to move, right? So the ability to find a human being who has your back when you don't even know you needed to have a back is important, which I think is slightly different from a mentor who probably is more technical in the way that they are raising your game in terms of the work that you do. I think sponsors don't necessarily have to be, they're tactile. It's your tactile strategy, whereas your mentor is more your technical capability.
Yeah.
And you need both.
Yeah, you do. And actually, for me, I think the benefit of having a sponsor, because of just how I work.
Yes.
I think.
Do people know how you work?
Yeah, some. But this disruptive, stepping outside of the boundary line,
stepping on lines,
stepping
on toes,
and
then making
challenging status quo,
but then making absolute moves to put a brand at its height.
Yeah, I think sponsorship is
you would have needed sponsorship.
Yes, very much. Okay, as we wrap up, I know that you've transitioned corporate to business multiple times, or one big time or multiple times. A lot of people are in corporate jobs and they have this hunger to step outside and get into business. What would you say the 3 things they should be aware of?
So here's a mistake I made.
Yeah.
Leaving with a plan, but without something actually concrete, like a very good plan.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to do a side hustle. Like you're gonna have to pull 2 strategies at the same time, which is very hard. But it's not for a long time.
What benefit would that have given you? What would it give one?
So the benefit that gives you is that when you do step out, because stepping out, so the illusion of being on your own is that your time is yours. Your time is yours so much so that you can die from isolation. That's how bad it gets. You know, there's a meme on Instagram that says, I'm talking to myself because I'm having a staff meeting. That may be funny, but entrepreneurs looking at that are like, I know what you're talking about, right? So the benefit would be that idea of yours needs financial legs, it needs clear delivery legs before you, just because you're a professional does not mean that you can do this. It needs a special kind of human being, right? Sometimes some of us need to be in there just fighting inside corporate and changing for the next generation. I mean, somebody has to. I often say that to you. Please stay. But here's a trend that I'm seeing. And the trend is that you have, because of affirmative action and transformation, you have women moving quite quickly up the ladder, or at least being mentored to do so. You have their partners who have equal qualification, getting good enough roles, but kind of staying at middle management. Those partners then leave to go and start businesses, partly because there's something inside them that wants to kind of equalize, and partly because they see opportunities outside, right? So a second thing would be to think very carefully around the dynamic that one is creating when one goes out to start a business. Especially if it's the male partner in a male-female relationship. It's going to be a couple of really hard years. And sometimes those hard years turn from 5 to 10, right? It's a huge strain on a new relationship and a new family. And I think it's just something that we need to, because this is something that is affecting specifically African Black couples, professional couples. So it's something that I think for me one must really be careful of. Your why, but not just your why, the impact on your interpersonal relationship, your intimate relationship, and what that's going to look like. The third thing for me is that people are quite romantic about business, about entrepreneurship. And one of the things we forget when we come out of corporate is that the titles that we hold, head of HR, CMO, those titles are titles that you actually leave behind. So the relationships that you garner and the people who are calling you because you have that title stop calling you when you have that title, right? So the ease with which you walk into certain doors, and we don't think about this because actually it's all going so well. I know so-and-so. I've got in my case, a whole Rolodex of people that I know who will pick up my call. They do not pick up the call, right? So very careful of thinking that the title that you currently have automatically carries the same weight when you're in your own business, because it doesn't. It really doesn't. It's a whole new game of people looking at you and saying, what are you going to give me in return? So it's
beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
Cheers to failure.